Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Manufacturing Matters podcast, where we discuss the trends and technologies reshaping manufacturing today. My name is Jimmy Carroll. I'm the Vice President of Operations at Tech B2B Marketing, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Mark Gagas, who is the COO at Sensory Robotics. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of
Looking
course.
forward to our conversation.
Yeah, and we've kind of continued we met at the A3 Business Forum in January. We've kind of continued that conversation for a while, and looking forward to diving in a little bit more. But I guess, like, for those who don't know about Sensory Robotics, could you tell us about the company and what you guys do there?
Yeah, so Sensory Robotics is a safety company. We do 3D virtual safety, and we take by way of our solution, we take all the traditional safety measures that you might typically see: hard guarding, fencing, the area scanners. And by creating a virtual safety environment, we remove those needs, and it allows workers and machinery to work naturally together.
Mm. Yeah, so like I mentioned, we met at the Biz Forum, and since then you and I have been talking back and forth. And I know one thing you're really excited about is that UL certification for your SR-1 product, I believe. So I guess, like, what does this mean for customers, and why are you guys so excited about it?
Well, the certification is such a huge thing for us because it really enables us to be proven in the market. With before we had this great product, and it was really more a project.
Yeah.
And with the certification, which took us 19 months to get through,
Wow.
um, so a lot of blood, sweat, and probably some tears that nobody would admit to. Um, the certification now enables us to sell into our customers. It's a defensible solution. Nobody has to, get permission when you come in and you say, "Hey, we've got this great product that we want to use," um, and it's PLD Cat 3 rated. It's UL 1740. It was measured against 13849 1 and 2. That's a defensible position for our customers. And so having the certification really means that we've now removed all barriers to entry into the market with a solution like this.
Very cool. So I guess, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but you'll be at some upcoming trade shows, and hopefully you'll have some demos. But in terms of, like, trusting your technology, right? Have you gone close to these robots while they're working, and had your product kind of flag the system and stop the arm from moving or whatever?
Yeah, it's actually fun because as you can imagine, so we partner with Denso locally in Cincinnati has been fantastic, and they've really been with us for day one. And not to go on this side story, but this actually whole company was designed as a gaming company around sword fighting robots, VR.
Okay.
And Chris had originally reached out to Denso just by chance and said, "Hey, I'm trying to develop this thing. Do you have a robot I could rent?" And they're like, "Oh, we'll just give you one to use. It's pretty cool." So Denso has been there from day one. At any rate, we test in their facility sometimes. They've got a big industrial robot, which we'll bring to automate. And, to your question, you've got this big thing moving at speed, and you just walk it towards it. And when you hit the safety zone, which is based on speed and separation, that thing just stops, or it slows and then stops, depending on how you have it set up. So there is a bit of a mental shift, I'll say, right? When you don't see any hard guarding, you don't see any safety, and people will see this coming up when you just walk towards that robot and it acts the way it's supposed to and stops when you're in its proximity and then releases and resumes operation when you leave. It's really a cool thing to see in person. And it's a very simple idea. I like the concept is simple. Okay, I walk towards it, it stops. Everything going on behind the scenes is pretty intense. So lots of math going on.
Yeah, for sure. And I look forward to testing it out myself. I think it'll be cool. But it's interesting that you mentioned video games too, right? Because it's like, in the last, well, it's been a while now, in the last maybe 8 to 10 years, but like the Microsoft Connect 3D camera really helped in a lot of ways, in my opinion. And I'm sure there's others out there that would say I'm wrong, but it seems to me like the Microsoft Connect really helped sort of democratize 3D almost in a way, or at least make it a more approachable, affordable technology. And It's kind of funny to see the intersection of gaming and robotics and industrial automation once again, and in a way that benefits the industry. You know?
Yeah, Chris, it's actually funny because Chris is like those Microsoft Connect cameras were like the first things, and Chris said, we were just talking, Chris said something about, if they knew how much these were selling for on the eBay and the third party markets, they probably never would have stopped making them because
Yeah.
they were just great. And our system was actually initially was designed with the Intel RealSense. I think
Yep.
they were the old 435s or something. Um, so any of those time of flight sensors um, would work with the system. Um, but the technology is fantastic. It's just a cool technology to be able to see things spatially in volume. Um, we often joke like because of that, it's not a plane, it's not like an area scanner where you can step on something.
Hmm.
If Tom Cruise Mission Style Impossible came down from the ceiling, the robot's going to stop because we're going to see him. So
Yeah. Yeah. It is all very cool, and I'm glad to see that. I know there were rumors about Intel winding down its real sense business. I think I've heard since then that that wasn't true and it was just blown out by the media. But they then spun out, and I'm glad to see that because so many robotics companies are using that camera or those cameras really. So
yep.
anyway, um, on the topic of 3D, 3D has made a lot of advances in the last several years, and like I said, like it used to be a larger, more expensive, maybe more difficult to implement technology. But how have advances in 3D and in industrial computing made a system like yours possible?
Yeah, I think that a few years back, maybe the technology wasn't quite there. Like the time of flight sensors, they've just gotten better. They've gotten faster. The quality's better.
Yep.
Um, what you can see is more, better resolution, so we can see tighter tolerances. And then edge computing has come a long way too. And the combination of both of those allows us to get a system because we have to have a system that reacts quickly. I mean, that's the safety
Right.
system, right? So every iteration, it's almost like try to figure out how to make your car get the most gas mileage, right? We'll take the mirrors off. We're basically stripping down everything that's unnecessary. Um, but the advances in the technology, which will continue to happen, allow us to build a system that we can sell at scale.
Yep.
And, maybe 5 or 6 years ago even, with pricing and quality, maybe you couldn't do that, I'd have to do the math and go back and look, but
Yeah.
maybe it just wasn't quite there yet. But now, as technology advances, well, actually, now I would argue that things aren't getting cheaper at all, right? Every time I order computers, the price is so much higher than it was, but,
True.
um, yeah, I think the technology as it advances helps us with our systems. Things are faster, things are just better.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're totally right. In the last couple of years, with supply chain and political strife and whatnot, like recently bought a solid state drive for my kid's PlayStation, and it was like $250, and I think it would have been like maybe $80 even like a year ago, and
Yeah, that's right.
a lot less even further back. But anyway, yeah, a lot of these advances are making system, and this is like an intuitive thing, but you hear it a lot in the market is like ease of use, right? Things becoming easier to use, easier to integrate, easier to troubleshoot, things like that. Um, when people want to implement your system, like what barriers to integration might exist when it comes to implementing it in a brownfield installation? Like how easy is it, or how difficult is it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's really two parts to that, right? The actual physical installation, which isn't so much the hurdle. We attach to existing infrastructure. The stack is pretty light.
Hmm.
It's a 2 by 2 foot panel. It's about 15 inches deep. Set that wherever you want. It's the sensors with the cables, and that's it. I mean, that's the entirety of the system. So the hardware installation isn't the challenge. I think the challenge is you're dealing with a lot of different departments within a facility, right? You've got the safety engineers, you've got the operations team, you've got um, possibly the legal team.
Yeah.
So you've got EHS. So you've got all of these departments, these silos, But the nice thing about it is the way SR1 is designed, it really gives them each a reason to say yes, right? So the operations guy is gonna get much more productivity than having fences around. So it's an easy win for him. The EHS team, we've got a certified system, so that's a pretty easy win for them. You can even go to the legal team and say, "Hey, look, it's not only certified, but, uh, your workers are more productive. I'd argue they're safer operating around these, so from a legal perspective, with the certification and some of the advantages. So we really, the challenge is getting through each of those, which sometimes takes time, sometimes it doesn't, but we've positioned this where everybody has a reason to say yes. So that's the challenge. So long story short, that's the challenge is more on the getting it through the process.
Yeah, for sure. And you kind of touched on this a little bit in your answer here, but how is your technology changing the role of different employees, whether it's like frontline workers or engineers or beyond?
Yeah, it's what's funny is it changes the way they feel about the work. It makes people more comfortable to be around the automation. I mean, whether you like it or not, you put a big fence in front of someone, that signals something. Mentally, that signals something. Like there's danger on the other side of this, right?
Mhm.
Um, when you remove those fences and once they understand that they can interact with this, like if me and you were standing next to each other and I walked up to you, hopefully you're not going to slug me, right? It's kind of the same idea, right? They can now work around these heavy industrial robots or cobots or whatever, and they can do it naturally, just like they would be a coworker. So I think there's a mental aspect of some relief, and then if you take it further to say, which is reality. I'm on the production line and a part dropped or something happened, and now I've got to stop everything because I have to go fix that. That's there's a little challenge with that in people's heads. So when you take all that away, and I can just walk up in 3 seconds, walk up, grab something, put it back, and walk out. Things just keep moving, right? So it releases kind of that stress of what needs to happen in a given day too.
Mm. I guess, and we're throughout the conversation thus far, we're kind of primarily talking about one product here, but you guys do have a number of other products, and we don't like to get too overly promotional here, but what do those other products do, and how might they benefit potential customers or existing customers?
Oh yeah, the other products are great. So we've got, we've got SR uh, 2, SR mobile, which is the project we're working on with the DoD, which is really cool. Um, and then we've got SR Insight too, which we could talk about. All of those products are great because they're really foundational. Everything's built off the foundation and the architecture that we've designed so far. So you've got the core technology is SR1, and SR1 is great. That's sensors on the outside looking in. And then you move to a product like SR Mobile, which is we got a DoD grant, and we're working on them with that for Air Force applications. That is now taking this technology and moving it further into the mobile platform, still protecting the manipulator that's on there. So this device, in theory, will move through its environment, and our safety will go along with it, right? And there's nobody doing that. Um, the mobiles have their own safety. The AMRs obviously have their own safety, but nobody can protect and monitor that arm. And then you move to something like SR2, which we're working on now, which is actually taking it a step further and embedding it in the arm or harnessing it to the arm. And that's a key distinction because, in my opinion, getting the safety to the arm is going to be a big win for a company like ours, but also for our customers, because then you own safety at the arm, right? And if you own safety at the arm, there's not much else for a competitor to sell in the safety environment. So we're looking forward to that. And then SR Insight is taking all of this data, right? We're getting a ton of data, and it's getting all of this data, and we're using it for there's 3 layers to it, and we're really excited about this. One is a productivity dashboard. So we see what's going on in the cell already. So how do we take that and make it meaningful? So providing our clients with a productivity dashboard, they can see what was stopped, how often it stopped, when was the robot slowed, how long was it down for, et cetera. Were the sensors up? Are there sensor issues? So we've got this dashboard as a very preliminary entry level kind of look.
Hmm.
And then we've got a second layer of that, which is we just got a TVSF grant from the University of Cincinnati, and we're partnering with their professors on the IP they've developed around human ergonomics and predictive motion analysis. So we're going to now take kind of this safety around the robot, and we're going to also have this layer of safety around the human. Is the human working properly? Are they lifting properly? Are they going where they should be going? Right. So we're having this analysis about what's actually happening in the cell, not this static look, but this real time kind of live look about what's actually occurring. And then the third layer is the risk assessment. And we're partnering with a company that has a software based risk assessment. And what's great about this is we're integrating that risk assessment into our software. So when a customer does their risk assessment and they upload it into the software, we now know what the risk assessment says. We can set thresholds, and with what we see is actually happening in the cell, perhaps it's more people came in than your risk assessment said, or maybe the robot's running faster than you said it was, or maybe there's a new piece of furniture, right? We know risk assessments are a moment in time. This will allow us to actually give you a live look into your risk assessment and make sure that everything is running the way you've designed it. And if it isn't, we'll send an alert to say your risk assessment broke because of, any number of reasons. So that's an exciting development. And that's all under the SR Insight bucket.
Hey everybody, I just want to take a quick second and thank our sponsor. Manufacturing Matters is sponsored by Tech B2B Marketing. They're a full-service public relations and marketing agency that focuses on technology companies, especially in the energy and automation markets. They provide full-service media relations, investor relations, employee relations, full end-to-end content development, videos, services, animation, full IT stack development from website integrating with ERP systems, CRM, marketing automation systems, and they bring a whole lot of knowledge and experience about technical markets since they've been servicing those markets for over 30 years. So if you have any questions, you want to learn more, go to techb2b.com. And now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, that's very cool. I got a couple follow-up questions here, and we're, I don't know, 15, 17 minutes into this, and that might be as long as I've gone without asking about AI, but I'm going to ask you now. And I imagine that there's some layer of AI being used in sort of the predictive analysis, predictive feature, or the analysis. Is that the case?
For the yes, for Insight, that will absolutely be the case. So that's going to be an AI layer, and it's going to sit outside of the safety function, though.
Yep.
So our system is really going to take what it sees and measure it against a third compute in the system in the panel, and we're going to reside there. So it doesn't touch the safety function. So we're good with our certification, but it's going to be an additional layer, and it is going to be AI based, especially around that human ergonomics pose estimation. Yeah,
Right.
exactly right.
And then, thank you, first of all. What was the other question? Oh, with SR2, well, when it comes to safety, I guess you can't be too safe, for lack of a better words. Like, do you foresee a scenario where you have the system built into the arm and above for redundancy, or do you think you won't need it?
We're testing that right now with the so this is kind of one of those situations where our ideas are kind of outpacing technology or what's available on the market, right?
Yeah,
So the key to SR2 is obviously the field of view, right? We need a wide field of view
yeah,
because when you mount the sensors, we have to see 360 around the robot. So the goal would be to, have the sensors around the robot perimeter, the base, and then have sensors on the upper arm so it can look out as a secondary. But the redundancy theoretically will all be done at the base with just blind spot monitoring,
yeah.
up on the arm.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. You mentioned earlier, like, something about nobody's really doing this, and that's one thing I wanted to ask is, like, what makes your technology different than competitors? Are there competitors
Yeah, sure. Well, so most fenceless safety solutions on the market use like, contact or proximity sensing on the robot itself, right? So skin-based solutions or torque limiting approaches.
Yep.
Um, and those methods require the robot to slow down significantly. So there's a trade-off because it eliminates the productivity decrease really is the challenge, right? When you've got your approach is to say, "Hey, if you hit this, it'll stop," or if this skin, which is cool stuff, right? You got to hit it to stop. That means it's got to run slower, can't operate around your head. It's got certain restrictions to it. So that really eliminates the productivity case for removing the fence in the first place, in my opinion. But that said, everybody has their place, and we embrace all of this great technology that's just trying to make the workplace safer. But
Yeah.
the difference is SR-1 really monitors the space around the robot, not the robot, itself. So you get full speed, full payload, full reach of whatever robot is running. So, and the certification around that is, I think that's the combination, right? It's full performance plus certified safety integrity, and that's why we're different.
Okay. Um, yeah, one question I wanted to ask, and it's one of the first things that came to mind when I first met you, and another guy that did something kind of somewhat similar at the business forum was like, there's been a lot of, I think they even made the distinction that collaborative robots aren't, we shouldn't be calling them collaborative robots. There's a lot of discourse on that, and I'm like, well, does a does a technology like what Sensory has with SR1, does it make every robot a collaborative robot? Like, where do you guys stand on this?
Yeah, it is. It's funny. We always say it makes industrial robots collaborative, or it makes collaborative robots more like industrial robots, right? So if you looked at the traditional definition of collaborative robot, it's heavily tied to the robot's own design, force limits, speed limits, rounded edges. I think it's 15066 that has that all laid out, right? But what we would argue is that collaboration is a property of the system, not the robot. So a heavy, fast, high payload robot could operate safely alongside humans if the environment around it is monitored and managed correctly. So we're not trying to really redefine what a cobot is. We're just saying the question
Yeah,
customers should be asking is, what does a safe, productive human robot workspace actually require? And sometimes the answer is a purpose-built cobot. But sometimes the answer could be a standard industrial robot with the right safety system around it.
yeah,
So we think SR-1 gives people that choice.
yeah, yeah. Fair enough. Good answer. Pragmatic. Um, another thing that came up that I've been thinking about that I've been waiting to ask you about is, we could argue. I mean, well, not us, but a lot of people would argue like how close we are to seeing widespread humanoid adoption, whether it's in the home or the industrial setting. But it's not there yet. But down the line, like, could you see your technology being used for humanoids?
Yeah, we've actually talked to a couple companies have reached out to us about it. I don't think it's in the distant future for us. Again, it's that tech question. Is the stack going to work for a humanoid, the size and with all the specs we need? But you know, it still presents the same you know problem that we already solve, which is really giving the machine situational awareness of what's around it. But we're watching the space closely, and I would argue the DoD work we're doing right now has some natural adjacency to it, because there's sensing and classification capabilities we're building, um, beyond kind of that fixed robot cell. So as the safety standards get written, which they're still, being figured out, I think, the sensing infrastructure is still going to be necessary regardless of what the standards say.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess like that sort of like safety umbrella would have to be extended. Although, though, just because if it falls, it has to be beyond the point where it'll hit
Yeah.
a person or a conveyor or whatever. But just thinking like, your system SR1, can it be used on any industrial robot, like even the big boys that are handling cars and things like that?
Yeah, we've actually got it at a customer on a couple big KUKA Titans.
Mm,
So pretty sizable robots. And as we said, we're agnostic in terms of what it goes on. As long as we can write a driver for it and communicate to it, That's really all we need. It's a really is a simple system in concept, right? So that's what's brilliant about this is uh, it, engineers now can start thinking about cell design not from the cages, but from the actual work, right? And then we can come in after and lay our safety around what they've designed. And that's opening up a lot of possibilities for customers because there's no more restrictions. Also, you can take it a step further, Jimmy, and think it's not just robots. Like we call them static hazards. So if I didn't want to go near this cup, right, we just call that a non-moving robot and we put the safety around that robot or this cup. So if you think about the applications that you could use that for, energized tables for transformer testing or any number of things, cutters and all sorts of stuff. Um, we can do that too. So we're not limiting ourselves just to robots. We're saying, hey, we can create this safety zone. Where do you want it, right? And then we'll
Yeah.
figure out how to make it integrate it with what you're doing.
You think about that on a large scale, like in a huge warehouse, and you're eliminating fences and all the additional need for that infrastructure, those costs. Seems like if you adopted it sort of widespread, you could really you could get more out of your space. Is that kind of a goal of yours?
100%. In fact, I'm waiting for the first customer, and we're not there yet, but I'm waiting for that first customer to say, "Hey, we're designing a factory, and we want to consider your solution as the solution for this design." Because if we're taking down fences, that means roughly, everything's different, 35% you might be able to save. Every robot's got dead space on all 4 sides, and what's
Hmm.
that dead space producing? Nothing, right? There's nothing being produced there. So we take down the fences, and now it's giving you opportunity to create more output because we're defined by the 4 walls we work in. That's what we have. So we're either gonna build more space or we can remove those fences, take that space, consolidate the production, add more robot cells, add inspection stations, add inventory, any number of things, right? But all of those things create output versus just being there for the sake of being there to
Yeah.
protect something, right?
As a marketing guy, I got to say, if you do find that company, you got to get those ROI numbers and put out a killer case study because that would tell your whole story right there. That
Yeah,
would be super
exactly.
cool. Mark, anything else that we haven't talked about that you guys are super excited about?
Yeah, I think, just touching on the certification again, what we achieved with SR1 is really it's not the finish line, it's the foundation as we talked
Hmm.
about. And SR Insight is where we really take this and put operational intelligence on top of it. So, those 2 things are just the certification with this new stuff we're doing, I would argue is really going to be interesting in the market. People are seeing it. Our customers are seeing it. We've had so many calls about it. And I think everybody's just envisioning what's this life without fences look like? What's this productive new world look like? So we're super thrilled to be part of that discussion with them.
Yeah, and I think the insights thing is very interesting too because we talked to on this podcast we talked to some folks at Schneider Electric
Yep.
in November at their innovation summit. I think that's what it's called, or maybe innovation forum. And one of the folks we talked to, we were talking about supply chain, and we said if somebody at a smaller or medium sized company compared to them, obviously, came into a new role in a supply chain adjacent role or supply chain role, what would be what are the top 3 things you would say? And one of the things he said, and kind of summarized through me less eloquently, was make sure that you focus on your data, position yourself so that you can collect all the data from every process and just be sure that you can access it and gain insights from it. And I
Yeah.
think that that's
That
what you guys are.
that's spot on.
Yeah,
That's spot on. We sat there for quite some time and said, "Geez, we got all this data. We got to do something with it, right? We got to do something with it." So we recognized, especially with all these AI models
yeah,
coming out, we can feed into those, right? We can give you what's actually happening. So that's the best part about having a vision system is
yeah.
we are getting 200 megabits a second out of every sensor as long as they're running. So it's a lot of information that you could use to help improve things.
Well, that's another really good point because so many companies today are adopting AI or even being mandated to adopt AI, and frankly, if you don't, to some extent, you'll probably get left behind. But to properly leverage AI and get anything out of it, you need data. You need
Yep.
quality data. And so, yeah, to me, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the I guess the short boiled down version is like make sure you have a means for collecting data and then figure out what to do with it. Right?
And what's the best data you can get is yours, right? Not
Yeah.
not borrowing from somewhere else and then trying to figure out how you can improve, right? Your actual data is the data that's going to help you improve your
Yeah.
processes.
Absolutely. Mark, where can people go to learn more and see your tech in person? I know we mentioned Automate, so you guys will be there and have a demo, but
Yep.
tell us about that.
So best place to start, sensoryrobotics.com, is the probably the simplest place. And then, if you're in or around Cincinnati, we're based at, UC at the 1819 Innovation Hub. So you can come see the technology live here, which is where I'm at right now. And it's one of the best ways really to understand what makes our approach different. So I'd invite anybody to come here. And then, as you said, Automate, I think our booth is 3840. So, again, we'll have a big Denso Industrial. Fanuc just said, "Hey, you gotta put our robots in there." So we'll have a big Fanuc Industrial in there. We're not gonna have any safety around it. It's just gonna be 2 guys sitting in the middle of the floor operating, and you're gonna be able to walk up and around them, and they're not gonna hurt you. So, we please would love to have you come by and take a look.
Yeah, I know. I personally looking forward to checking that out myself. So
Awesome.
yeah, so with that, Mark, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. If anybody has questions for Mark, I'd be happy to pass those along. You can reach out to us at manufacturing-matters.com. And thank you very much for joining. And Mark, once again, thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. It was great talking to you.
Likewise. Thanks.